So the Republic's ended, right? 1797, the Republic ends. But in 1840s, they make the monumental decision to link Venice to the mainland via the railroad. They build this causeway, 2.5 miles long, bringing the railroad. Now, of course, it also brings in cars, but they bring it over. This ends Venice's physical isolation, which for 1,000 years or more had been its safeguard. Remember, Pepin couldn't conquer Venice in 810 because he couldn't get across the water. No one had ever been able to conquer Venice because they couldn't get across the water. Now Venice realizes it has to link up to the rest of Italy. And so this becomes the moment. They're not only building a railroad, they are in the process of building a nation, Italy. And Venice will become part of Italy in 1866 when it finally frees itself from Austria. The other thing that happens here in the 19th century is Venice undergoes a massive period of industrialization, heavy industry. A lot of heavy industries locate to Venice. Now that the railroads come in, they can bring in heavy industry. One idea was to bring the railway station to San Giorgio Maggiore, or to where the Salute is. Can you imagine ripping through the city, putting the railroad right up to San Giorgio Maggiore or to the Salute? It would have destroyed the fabric of Venice. But they thought about it. And so a lot of heavy industry is brought in, and they make huge infrastructure projects to start making it easier to move about the city. They build 2 more bridges across the Grand Canal. There was only one, Rialto. This is the first Accademia Bridge. It was an iron bridge brought in from England. It was brought in by pieces and erected here in Venice. Taken down in the 1930s, they put up the wooden temporary bridge, which is still there after 100 years. You've all gone over the wooden temporary Rialto Bridge. It's probably going to be there for another 100 years. And they build the one right by the train station. So then there were 3 bridges across the Grand Canal to try to facilitate traffic. They filled in a lot of canals in the 19th century. Here we are right by the Accademia. There's the Accademia right there. This, if you know, this was a canal. If you see trees like this running up in a line, there was sidewalk there was a sidewalk there, but this was a canal. So this is called a Rio Terra, infilled canal. Terra means land, right? Rio is a canal. If you walk around in Venice and see the line Rio Terra, it means there was a canal there. The other thing they do is they widen streets. As you know, if you've been to Venice, many of the streets are literally, you can touch the 2 walls as you walk down them. Here, they have literally, this is the famous street with all the fancy schmancy shops on it. This is, Gucci and, Ferragamo, they're all here, right? This street was widened in the 19th century. No streets in Venice aren't this wide. They literally cut back the buildings and reapplied the facades. Because what are they trying to do? They're trying to make it easier for pedestrians. So the 19th century sees these massive infrastructure projects. There's so much industry, there's so much change going on that the big debate also becomes, how do we preserve Venice? And so that sparks actually a Europe-wide preservation debate. Here on the left, you see one of my favorite buildings in Venice. This started life in the 13th century as a private Venetian private palace. But in the 17th century becomes the Turkish merchant's warehouse. And this is what it looked like in the 19th century. This is what much of Venice looked like in the 19th century. It was in ruins. Venice was impoverished in the 19th century. The building is falling apart. And then a guy named Federico Berchet comes along and restores it. But look at this. He takes a lot of liberties. There's no evidence that there were these corner towers, but he adds them. There's no evidence. He takes marbles that were on San Marco and puts them on the facade. There's no evidence that the whole facade was encrusted with marbles like this. So John Ruskin, the famous Stones of Venice English writer, is furious. What are you guys doing? But Berchet is influenced by Viollet-le-Duc, the Frenchman who adds the steeple to Notre Dame in Paris. Says we make better buildings better than they were. We make them how they should have been. And so this sparks the debate, which is last to this day in Venice, of how do you restore and how much do you restore? And the slogan in Venice, as I think you know, is dov'era com'era, where it was as it was. So when the Fenice burned down in the 90s, the Opera House burned down. That would have been a moment when Venice could have said, okay, let's be architecturally daring. Let's build a modern opera house. Nope. Dov'era com'era. Let's build it where it was, as it was. When the bell tower of San Marco fell in 1902, it collapsed. They say, dov'era com'era. Let's build it where it was, as it was. Except they put an elevator in when they rebuilt it rather than having to walk up by steps. But so Venice, in some ways, of course, as you know, remains at the center of preservation debates even today. Think of all the organizations like Save Venice that, it's always about, how much do we intervene in the Venetian cityscape?